A homeless man asks Elon Musk, "Can you give me $1? Musk's response is unexpected. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit the subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Los Angeles was buzzing with its usual energy, a mix of contrasts. On one end, sprawling homeless encampments symbolized struggle and desperation under the harsh Californian sun. On the other, pristine storefronts displayed luxury cars and designer goods, a stark reminder of lives untouched by hardship. Benny stood somewhere in between, leaning against a graffiti-covered wall, holding a battered cardboard sign that read, "Resistance never extends. Anything helps. Godless expense." Benny's life had never been this bleak. Once a college dropout, was that he'd figured things out? He was now 36, and the life he had hoped for never arrived. Years had been cruel, and he found himself among the countless invisible souls surviving on the city's edge. Most days, people ignored him, but today felt different. Across the street, a crowd had gathered outside the Tesla showroom. Benny couldn't help but notice the unmistakable figure stepping out of the sleek glass doors. Elon Musk himself. The billionaire's presence radiated an aura that drew the attention of everyone around him. Photographers clicked away while assistants hovered nearby. For a moment, Benny felt a surge of resentment. How could one man hold so much wealth and power while others like him fought just to survive? Then an idea crossed his mind. What if he just asked for something? What if he just asked for something? Without thinking too much, Benny moved toward the sidewalk where Elon was walking, his heart pounding. He called out, "Hey man, can you give me $1?" The words hung in the air, a challenge to the universe. Benny expected Elon to ignore him or toss a bill his way, but instead Elon stopped in his tracks. He turned slowly, his gaze locking onto Benny. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The assistants halted, and even the cameras paused. Elon tilted his head as though he was reading Benny's entire life in an instant. $1? Elon asked, his voice almost curious. Benny nodded, his throat dry. Elon smiled faintly, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I won't give you $1, he said, "but I'll give you something better." Benny blinked, confused. "Like what?" he asked. Elon, ignoring the murmurs from his entourage, replied, "Come back here tomorrow at noon. I have an idea." And with that, he turned and strode toward the waiting Tesla, his assistants following behind him. Within seconds, the sleek car disappeared into the city's traffic, leaving Benny standing, stunned. For a long moment, Benny stayed rooted to the spot, clutching his warm sign. Other homeless people nearby stared at him, expressions ranging from disbelief to envy. Finally, one of them spoke. "What did you say to him?" Benny shook his head. "I just asked for $1." Benny shrugged. "He said to meet him tomorrow." "He said to meet him tomorrow." "He said to meet him tomorrow." As the sun began to set, Benny walked back to his usual sleeping spot under a nearby overpass. His mind raced with possibilities. each one more outrageous than the last. Was this some cruel joke or a real opportunity? That night, as Benny lay on the cold concrete, staring up at the stars peeking through the smog, he allowed himself to feel something he hadn't in years. Hope, whatever awaited him the next day. It couldn't be worse than the life he was living. For the first time in a long while, he fell asleep, thinking about the possibility of something better. The next morning, Benny woke with an unusual sense of anticipation. Mornings usually meant just another day of scavenging, avoiding judgmental stares, and wondering how he'd survive. But today was different. Today, he had an appointment with one of the wealthiest men in the world. By the time Benny reached the Tesla showroom, the sun was high, casting a warm glow on the sleek building. His heart raced as he scanned the area, half expecting Elon to be a no-show. But there he was, casually dressed in a black t-shirt and jeans, standing near the entrance, as if this was just another day in his extraordinary life. Elon spotted Benny and waved him over. Elon spotted Benny and waved him over. "Glad you came," Elon said with a friendly but businesslike tone. "Let's take a walk." Benny followed him, feeling both out of place and oddly hopeful as they walked through the bustling streets. Elon spoke thoughtfully. People often assume homelessness is just about a lack of resources. But it's more than that. It's a lack of opportunity, structure, and most importantly, belief in oneself and belief from others. Benny, unsure of where this was going, asked, "Why are you telling me this?" Elon stopped walking and turned to face him. "Because I want to try something new," he said. "Tesla isn't just a car company. It's built on solving big problems. We're launching a program to help people like you rebuild their lives. But I need someone to test it first. Someone willing to test it first. Someone willing to take a chance." Benny raised an eyebrow. "You want me to test it? Why?" Elon smiled faintly. "Because you asked for a door yesterday. Today, instead of walking away, I saw potential in you. You're bold enough to take a chance, and that's exactly what I need." Elon gestured to a nearby parking lot where a shiny Tesla Model S was parked. "Here is the deal. I want you to be the participant in this program. The funds will give you access to resources and opportunities, but you have to prove you're up for the challenge. Each step will test your determination, creativity, and willingness to grow. The first task starts now." Benny stared at the car, confused. "Wait, you want me to do something with that?" Elon nodded. "I want you to drive it through downtown Los Angeles without breaking a single traffic rule. It might sound simple, but it's harder than you think. And yes, the car has autopilot, but you'll still need to be in control. You'll be responsible for every decision." Benny's stomach sank. "I've never driven a car before," he admitted. "That's fine," Elon replied. "We'll teach you. Think of it as a crash course. Figuratively, of course." Before Benny could protest, a Tesla instructor named Clara approached with a clipboard. and a reassuring smile. "Hi, Penny. I'm Clara. I'll help you get the hang of things today." What followed were hours of instructions, practice runs, and moments of sheer terror. Penny gripped the steering wheel as if his life depended on it, heart racing, palms sweating. But by the end of the session, he had successfully navigated a quiet parking lot without incident. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Elon approached and asked, "How'd it go?" Clara smiled. "He's a quick learner. With a little more practice, I think he can handle the challenge." Elon looked at Benny with a serious but encouraging expression. "Tomorrow, the real test begins. Are you ready?" Benny hesitated, then nodded. "I think so." "Good," Elon said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Get some rest. You'll need it." As Benny walked away from the showroom, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years filled him. Purpose. That night, Benny didn't sleep much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the shiny Tesla Model S and the daunting challenge ahead. Failure had been his constant companion for years. But tomorrow, he would face it head-on, filled the space. As they moved from one department to the next, Benny was struck by the sense of purpose each team member exuded. They weren't just solving problems. They were creating something bigger than themselves. Something that would change the world. Elon paused as they reached a small but bustling lab where engineers were testing out new prototypes for autonomous driving features. The room was filled with hums and whirs of machinery, and the air crackled with anticipation. "This is where the magic happens," Elon said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Every breakthrough, every idea starts with the question and a belief that we can do something different. And it doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is your ability to think outside the box and take the lead." Benny stood there, trying to absorb it all. His mind was still reeling from the incredible progress he had made in such a short time. Just weeks ago, he had been barely scraping by, unsure of where his next meal would come from. Now, he was in the heart of one of the most innovative companies in the world, surrounded by people whose ideas and vision seemed to come from another planet. As they walked back toward the main building, Elon turned to him. "Benny, what you've accomplished over the past week is incredible. But this, what you see here, this is the next level. You got the mindset now, the hunger for growth. You've learned how to lead, how to take control. Now I want you to ask yourself, what if you could take the skills you've developed and apply them here? What if you could help shape the future of technology, of how we move, how we live?" Benny felt his heart race. The challenge had gone from driving a Tesla through downtown LA to leading a cleanup project to now this new, almost unthinkable opportunity. But the idea sparked something deep inside him. What if? He swallowed hard, taking a moment to collect himself. Elon nodded, smiling. "That's all it takes, a willingness to try." to push beyond what you think is possible. This is how we change the world. One idea, one leap at a time. And I believe you're ready for it. As Benny stood there, looking out over the vast campus, he realized that his journey wasn't just about overcoming the challenges in front of him. It was about overcoming the doubts inside of him. The fear, the uncertainty, the feeling of being small and powerless. All of it was melting away, replaced by a quiet, steady confidence that came from within. This was no longer just about getting by. It was about contributing, about leading, about shaping the future. And for the first time in years, Benny felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The room buzzed with energy, as the next stop was a workshop dedicated to Tesla's more experimental projects. Elon led Benny to a sleek display of ideas, including a Hyperloop transportation design, a drone prototype, and even a concept for a solar-powered shelter to be deployed in disaster zones. This is where I want you to start thinking, Elon said, turning to Benny. The program we're building isn't just about helping people like you. It's about creating systems that tackle the root causes of homelessness, lack of resources, lack of opportunities, and lack of hope. Benny stared at the solar-powered shelter. You think this could actually work? Like, for real? For people on the streets? Elon nodded. Not only do I think it can work, but I believe it can scale. The point is to use technology to create solutions that don't just patch problems, but solve them at their core. After the tour, Elon led Benny to a conference room where a group of Tesla employees waited. A large touchscreen displayed graphs, charts, and mock-ups for the homelessness initiative. Now it's her turn, Dira said, gesturing for Benny to sit. I want her input. What do you think this program needs to succeed? You've been through the system. We haven't. Your perspective is invaluable. Benny froze. He wasn't used to being asked for his opinion, especially in a room full of experts. His first instinct was to deflect, to say he didn't know. But then he remembered everything he'd experienced over the past few weeks. The driving challenge, the cleanup effort, the people he'd met. I think people need something to aim for, Benny said slowly. When you're homeless, it's not just about surviving. It's about feeling invisible, like you don't matter. If this program can give people a goal, a purpose, and a way to prove to themselves that they are worth something, that's what will make it worth. The room was quiet for a moment, the team absorbing his words. Then a young woman with a tablet in hand nodded. That's a powerful insight. What if we incorporated a gamification aspect? Small tasks that build toward bigger achievements with rewards along the way. Elon smiled. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need, Benny. What else? Benny hesitated, then spoke again. You know how there are apps for everything these days? What if there was an app for this program? It could connect people with resources, nearby shelters, food, jobs, and maybe track their program, show them how far they've come. Elon leaned back, clearly impressed. That's a solid idea. Practical, scalable, and empowering. Hmm. As the meeting wrapped up, Benny felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had never thought of himself as someone who could contribute to something this big, but the way the team had listened to him, genuinely listened, made him realize he had more to offer than he'd ever realized. Before he left, Elon pulled him aside. Benny didn't know how to respond, so he simply nodded. As he walked out of the building, he felt a sense of purpose unlike anything he'd ever experienced. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was helping to build a future, not just for himself, but for others like him. And for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a distant, unattainable dream. It felt possible. Benny thought he had faced every challenge Elon Musk could throw at him. Driving through the chaotic streets of downtown Los Angeles, leading a team of volunteers to clean up a neglected neighborhood, and even contributing ideas to Tesla's groundbreaking homeless initiative. But when Elon handed him a sealed envelope for his final task, Benny thought he'd faced every challenge Elon Musk could throw at him. And he thought every time he turned it on, this one's different. Elon said, his expression serious but kind. It's personal. You've proven you can tackle external challenges, but this is about confronting something within yourself. Open it when you are ready. Benny waited until he was alone in his modest temporary housing, a far cry from the overpass where he used to sleep. His hands trembled slightly as he tore open the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper with a name and address, Maria Bennett, followed by an apartment number. His heart sank. Maria was his younger sister, someone he hadn't seen or spoken to in over 5 years. Their last conversation had been a shouting match full of Vader reprise. His head fell forwards, and his hands came up shouting. He called her a 3 social warrior. Someone he had come for her. His heart cried for it mouth to moments later on. He couldn't get the word out. He closed his eyes in preparation. Now Elon was asking him to do what he'd avoided for so long. Face the person he had hurt most and attempt to repair what was broken. The next morning, Benny stood outside the address on the paper. It was a modest apartment complex with faded paint in a small courtyard filled with overgrown plants. He felt like an intruder as he approached the door marked with Maria's number. What would she say when she saw him? Would she slam the door in his face? Would she even recognize him? His mind raced with worst-case scenarios, but he forced himself to knock. The door creaked open to reveal a woman in her early 30s, with tired eyes and a weary expression. For a moment, she simply stared at him. Benny couldn't tell if she was shocked, angry, or both, but she was no longer so helpless. He'd never seen it. Maria, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She folded her arms, her posture defensive. He struggled to find the words. Maria's eyes narrowed. Her words hit Benny like a punch to the gut, but he knew she was right. He'd made mistake after mistake, and Maria had borne the brunt of his failures. "You're right," he said, his voice cracking. "I was selfish and I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm trying to change. I've been part of this program, this opportunity that's given me a chance to turn my life around. And part of that is facing the people I've let down." Maria's expression softened slightly, but her guard didn't drop. "And what? You think showing up here fixes everything?" "Doing anything," he said, then added a shumran. "No," Benny admitted. "I don't think it fixes anything. I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for all of it, and I want to do better, not just for me, but for you too, if you let me." There was a long silence as Maria seemed to weigh her next move. Finally, she stepped aside and gestured for Benny to come in. The apartment was small but cozy, with framed photos on the wall and the faint smell of fresh coffee. Benny noticed a photo of their parents on a side table, alongside a picture of Maria smiling with friends. They sat across from each other in the living room. The tension was thick but not insurmountable. Maria asked about his life, where he'd been, what he'd been doing, and Benny answered honestly, holding nothing back. He told her about the years of homelessness, the shame he had carried, and the unexpected chance Elon had given him. As the conversation unfolded, Maria's icy demeanor began to thaw. She shared her own struggles, how she had worried about him constantly, how angry and helpless she had felt, and how she had finally decided to focus on her own life because she couldn't save him. "I wanted to help you," she said, her voice trembling. "But you didn't want to help yourself. It broke my heart." Benny nodded, tears stinging his eyes. "I know. And I hate that I put you through that. But I'm trying, Maria. I really am." By the time Benny left the apartment, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city. Maria hugged him before he walked out, a gesture that spoke more than words ever could. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. As he stood outside, Benny pulled out his phone and texted Elon, "Task complete. Thank you." Elon replied almost immediately, "Well done. See you tomorrow." Benny slipped his phone back into his pocket, a weight lifting from his chest. The final challenge had been the hardest by far, but it had also been the most meaningful. For the first time in years, he felt like he had taken a real step toward mending not just his own life, but the relationships he had broken along the way. A month had passed since Benny's journey began, and now he found himself back where it all started. Outside the Tesla showroom in downtown Los Angeles. The early morning sun cast a golden hue over the city, but Benny barely noticed. His mind was preoccupied with what Elon had planned for today. Benny's life had changed dramatically since their first meeting. He had completed challenges he once thought impossible, met incredible people who believed in him, and even taken the first steps toward repairing his relationship with his sister. Yet, standing in front of the same slick building, he felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation as the crowd gathered. This time, the crowd was much larger. Reporters, Tesla employees, and members of the public had all shown up, drawn by whispers of an announcement. Cameras flashed and microphones were adjusted as Elon Musk arrived a few minutes later, stepping out of a Model X with his usual air of confidence. He approached Benny with a smile, shaking his hand firmly. "You ready for this?" Elon asked. "I think so," Benny replied, though his heart was pounding. The two of them stepped onto a makeshift stage in front of the showroom. Elon took the microphone and addressed the crowd with his characteristic blend of humor and vision. "When I started Tesla, it wasn't just about building cars," he began. "It was about solving big problems, problems that seemed impossible to fix. Today, I want to talk about another problem we're tackling: homelessness. It's an issue that affects millions of people, not just in Los Angeles, but across the world. And like with all big problems, the solution starts with a simple idea: the belief that people, no matter their circumstances, can change their lives when given the right tools to do." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Over the past months, we've been testing a pilot program aimed at helping individuals get back on their feet. It's not about handouts. It's about empowerment. And today, I want to introduce you to the person who helped us prove that this idea can work." Elon turned to Benny and gestured for him to take the microphone. Benny swallowed hard as he stepped forward, the crowd's eyes fixed on him. Public speaking wasn't something he'd ever done before, but as he looked out at the sea of faces, he reminded himself of everything he had accomplished. "My name is Benny," he began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. He paused, glancing at Elon, who nodded encouragingly. "This past month has been the hardest and most rewarding time of my life. I've learned how to face challenges, lead others, and most importantly, believe in myself again. I've also learned that change isn't about where you start. It's about where you're willing to go. And I'm here today to tell you that anyone can take that journey if they're given the choice." The crowd erupted into applause, and Benny stepped back, feeling a mix of pride and relief. Elwan returned to the microphone, holding a small envelope in his hand. "Benny, you're proving something incredible," he said. Not just to me or to Tesla, but to everyone watching. You have shown that when you give people the tool to succeed, they don't just survive, they thrive. And as a token of that journey, I want to give you something. He handed Benny the envelope. Inside was a single dollar bill, crisp and pristine.